They say that parenting is a skill that only a few can get right, and being a good parent is one of the toughest things in the world. Heck, it's not easy to get that world's best dad or world's best mom coffee mug without putting in the effort, right? Sadly, that's why some children grow up to eventually have very toxic relationships with their parents. And for others, well, let's just say that they become so damaged that they decide to take matters into their own hands and do the unthinkable. And this is exactly what Jennifer Pan did when she planned the murder of her mom, Bic Pan, and permanently scarred her father, Han Pan. Her reason? She accused her parents of practicing tiger parenting, which caused a massive rift in their relationship. So, what exactly pushed her to do this? Well, to figure out the entire story, we have to go back to where it all started. You see, in 1979, Bic and Han Pan migrated from Vietnam to Canada. They did so in search of a better life for their future children. After 6 years living in their newfound home, they had their daughter Jennifer, and then followed by their son named Felix 3 years later. While living in Canada, Bic and Han worked hard at an automotive company based in Toronto, Ontario. The two worked round the clock for all the money they made, developed a consistent habit of saving the little that they earned. For them, it was paving a way for their children to live a much better life than they did. Because they wanted their children to have better careers than they did, they were extremely strict with them. They were what you would consider as modern-day tiger parents, which parents from the Asian community that push their children above and beyond to excel in their education. Simply put, these are parents that want to give their children the best that life has to offer, but at the same time create a hardworking culture so they can work for all they get. That means getting straight A's in school and excelling in their education so that they can choose career paths that can enhance their lives. So it's no surprise that Jennifer and Felix were under a lot of pressure in the Pan household. In the case of 18-year-old Felix, he studied hard and went on to pursue mechanical engineering in one of the finest universities in Canada. It's no secret that his father influenced him to take this course so that he could later come to work for the same automotive company, only this time around, his son would be a boss in the company. During the early years of her life, Jennifer was a pretty smart kid. She had just started learning the piano when she was only 4 years old, but also excelled in other musical instruments and was deeply interested in skating. Jennifer had plans to go on and win medals in the Olympics in figure skating, but a freak accident while training made her injure her knee, and she had to quit her lifelong dream. Seeing her dreams go up in smoke, Jennifer started getting out of control. And this was the beginning of her transformation into an entirely different person. She began failing her classes and consistently getting C's in her coursework. Her poor performance ended up getting her kicked out of her Catholic high school for poor grades and bad behavior. After discovering her poor performance early on, Jennifer's parents decided to take matters into their own hands. They began controlling her life and practically monitoring every step that she made. This included picking her up and dropping her off at school every day. They also forbade her from participating in any kind of extracurricular activities. Stressed out from her parents' high demands, Jennifer began forging her report cards in the 11th grade to make it seem like she was scoring straight A's in front of her parents. Aside from being tough on her about her schoolwork, Bic and Han also did not take kindly to Jennifer having any male company in her life. They didn't allow her to date or even have any male friends come to visit her. They believed that having a boyfriend would distract her from becoming a doctor, which is what they always wanted her to be. There's no doubt that with all this pressure around her, Jennifer felt like she was a prisoner in her own home. She felt trapped because her parents didn't give her the freedom to do anything except go to school and focus on her education. But despite their best efforts to limit Jennifer's social life, she managed to meet a boy named Daniel while she was in the 11th grade. Jennifer instantly felt connected to him, and the two started dating. But maybe the reason why was because she barely had any time to meet someone else. The two would bond during band practice and soon hit it off romantically. Worried about her super obsessive parents, Jennifer knew that she had to keep the relationship a secret, and Daniel had no choice but to accept having a girlfriend on the down low. Towards the end of her high school years, Jennifer informed her parents that she had been accepted to Ryerson University in Toronto, one of the top-performing universities in the province. But before she could graduate high school, she discovered she had failed a math class, which meant that the university had no choice but to revoke her admission. Since she didn't want her parents to find out about it, she boldly created a fake acceptance letter and presented it to her parents. Bic and Han were excited, but little did they know that this was the beginning of a string of lies that would completely ruin their lives. As I mentioned earlier, it was Bic and Han's dream for their daughter to become a doctor. However, after thinking about it for a couple months, Han realized that medicine was not the best fit for her because Jennifer was scared of blood. But her father still wanted her to do something involving healthcare, so he told Jennifer to pursue a career in pharmacology. Though it was not her passion, Jennifer reluctantly accepted to do the course and told her father that once she did 2 years of schooling at Ryerson University, she would transfer to the University of Toronto to pursue a career in pharmacology. You still have to remember at this point, Jennifer had lied about graduating high school and enrolling in university. To make sure her lies were not exposed, she even told her parents she had been awarded an all-inclusive scholarship to go to college, so they didn't have to worry about paying any of her tuition fees. Jennifer also kept lying to her parents by regularly buying textbooks, studying, and even taking notes while she was in her bedroom at home. It was all part of the charade. Sadly, even as she pretended to be at the university and get good grades, Han and Bic were still very strict with Jennifer. They forbade her from going to parties or even going out at all. Jennifer was strictly allowed to do 2 things in her life that gave her the freedom of being outside. One of them was working at a restaurant, and the other was teaching piano lessons. Sadly, Jennifer continued to lie to her parents about her education for more than 2 years. But things began to fall apart when Jennifer was getting ready to transfer to the University of Toronto, as was earlier agreed upon. Her father asked whether she had been accepted into the university, to which Jennifer replied yes, she had, continuing the already super elaborate lie. To cover her tracks, she got online assistants to forge another acceptance letter to fool her parents into thinking she would be attending the University of Toronto for pharmacology. In the 2 years that she had been lying to her parents, Jennifer was still dating Daniel. Unfortunately for her, she rarely had time to see him, but she was determined to change this situation. She decided to lie to her parents some more. She informed them that she would start spending more time with her new friends at Topaz's house, since commuting to school from her friend's place would be less intense. Her parents gave her the nod of approval because Topaz was one of her female friends. But little did they know that this was merely a lie to enable her to move in with Daniel and spend more time with him at his house. It also is important to note that Daniel was your typical bad boy who had his fair share of run-ins with the law. Interestingly enough, another 2 years went by and Jennifer continued with her crazy secrets. She had discovered someone online who continuously helped her fake her transcripts, as well as create a fake degree, which she showed to her parents. She said this was the happiest they'd ever been with her achievements. Graduation day arrived. Han and Bic were excited to attend their daughter's graduation ceremony. But once again, Jennifer cooked up another intense story and informed her parents that because her graduating class was so big, each student was only given 1 ticket to attend. And so, Jennifer had done the selfless thing to give the ticket to her friend. How sweet! If they only knew the truth. Since Jennifer had stretched out her lie to the point where her parents thought she had graduated, she lied to her parents some more that she had gotten a job working at a hospital's blood lab. This was the lie that would bring her tower of lies crumbling down. Because by now, Han and Bic were getting increasingly suspicious of their daughter when they noticed that she did not have a key card, as well as a single lab coat or uniform for the hospital lab. Yet, she would leave for work every single day? To get to the bottom of things, her parents decided to one day offer to drive her to work. Jennifer instantly began panicking because if they took her to the hospital, they would discover that she doesn't work there. So when her parents dropped her off at the entrance, Jennifer suddenly ran inside the hospital and hid in the emergency room. Han and Bic ran after her, but were unable to locate her whereabouts in the hospital. She hid in the hospital emergency room for hours until her parents left. But too late, her parents had already begun sniffing her web of lies from a mile away. Super suspicious of her living conditions, Han and Bic decided to ring up Jennifer's friend Topaz to find out whether she was actually staying with her or not. To their surprise, Topaz shocked them by telling them that she had not seen Jennifer for several days. Later that night, Han and Bic cornered their daughter and interrogated her until she finally cracked. She told them everything. how she'd been lying to them for over 5 years. But instead of coming out completely clean, the crafty Jennifer decided to leave out some of the lies in her web of deceit. She admitted that she never went to the University of Toronto. She also confessed that for over 2 years she had been living with Daniel, and not Topaz. Though she came clean about some of those lies, she opted to leave out the fact that she did not graduate high school. She also did not reveal anything about failing to attend Ryerson University. Once they found out some element of the truth, Han and Bic could not believe what their daughter had become. A pathological liar that had forged a whole fictional life for this long? It felt as if someone else was living under their roof. They were enraged and decided to be twice as strict just to punish her. They confiscated her phone and began following the mileage on her car. She was forced to quit her job as a waitress and was only allowed to go out to teach piano lessons. And once again, she was to come straight back home. Han and Bic still insisted that she continue to apply to colleges. Of course, they had no idea that she had failed to graduate high school more than 4 years ago. But the one thing they took away from her that made her completely depressed was the fact that she was not allowed to see Daniel ever again. Han even stated that the only time she would ever see Daniel was after he was buried 6 feet under. On the other hand, Daniel was not too keen on this secret relationship that he was having with Jennifer. What was the point of calling someone your girlfriend if you barely got to see them? That's when Daniel decided to end things with Jennifer and find himself a new girl. This didn't sit well with Jennifer, seeing the love of her life with another partner. It was the last straw that nudged her over the edge. Desperate to get Daniel back, Jennifer decided to make up another lie to crush the new relationship that Daniel was in. She told Daniel that 3 men had come over to her house and attacked her. She hid away to avoid getting spotted, but the next day after the attackers were gone, she went to the front porch and found a bullet in her mailbox. She then claimed that the attack was masterminded by Dylan's new girlfriend, who felt threatened by her existence. Obviously, Daniel did not believe a word that she said. He made the decision to move on with his life, which completely disoriented Jennifer. She felt she had truly lost the love of her life. A few months later, Jennifer reunited with one of her old-time friends, Andrew, whom she had known from her middle school years. After spending a few hours together, the two opened up about their pasts. They both talked about how their parents were each giving them a hard time. Andrew later revealed that he had plans for ending his father's life because of things he experienced under his care. These were words that no doubt sparked the idea that maybe like Andrew, she could also get rid of her tough parents. She began imagining how much freer and better her life would be if her parents weren't in this world. She confessed this to Andrew, who agreed to help her carry out her plan. Andrew introduced her to a hitman who took up the job to end her parents' lives. The man in question went by the name Ricardo, and Jennifer paid him $1,500 to carry out the hit. The money came from most of the savings that she had set aside while teaching piano lessons. Fortunately for Jennifer's parents, Ricardo chickened out from taking them out and decided to escape with Jennifer's money instead. As soon as Jennifer realized that she had been ripped off, she was furious, but still decided to go through with her plan. She still wanted to end her parents' lives. A couple of months went by and the lonely Jennifer yearned to be reunited with Daniel. Strangely, Daniel ended things with his previous girlfriend and got back to Jennifer. The two fell hopelessly in love with each other once more, but this love also saw them point at Jennifer's parents as a hindrance to their relationship. That's when Jennifer revealed her plans to take out her parents, to which Daniel agreed to help her out. Daniel connected Jennifer to a pair of hitmen who agreed to take out her parents for a sum of $20,000. A high expense, but something she was willing to pay for to finally be with the man she truly loved. So she decided to go through with the plans for the murder on the night of November 8th. 2010. It would mark one of the darkest and most horrific nights of this family's history. Han went to bed around 8 p.m. while Bic was busy watching television in the living room. Jennifer got out of the room and went downstairs to say goodnight, but her intentions were far from good. She was actually doing this so she could unlock the front door. She then went into the study room and flicked the light 3 times as a way to indicate to the hired hitmen that it was time to do their job. At this point, the 3 hitmen walked through the front door. One of them went upstairs to Han's bedroom to get him, and another went to Jennifer's room to grab her. One of the men got Jennifer to search for money around the house and give it all to them. Then they tied up Jennifer to the banister upstairs, but proceeded to tie up both of her parents and take them to the basement of the house. At this point, 5 gunshots rung in the air, and 3 of them hit Bic. One of the bullets hit her in the back of her head, and she died instantly. The gunman then left the house after the job was done, but something miraculous happened. Determined to cheat the Grim Reaper, Han miraculously survived a horrific gunshot wound to the face. At the same time, Jennifer called the police and informed the operator that they had just been victims of a home invasion. But before Jennifer could finish narrating the ordeal, Han could be heard screaming in agony. As well as the pain from his awful injuries, he was heartbroken when he discovered his wife hadn't survived. Han crawled outside to get help, and this is when the neighbors spotted him. The neighbors got in touch with the police as well as the paramedics, who came to take a look at the crime scene. Because of how severe his wounds were, Han had to be put into a medically induced coma to save his life. While all this was happening, Jennifer was directed to give her statement to the police, claiming that a home invasion had taken place. However, one small detail would change the course of this tragedy forever. You see, Jennifer had not anticipated that her father Han would survive. So to her surprise, Han had seen Jennifer having a friendly conversation with the contracted hitman minutes after they fired their weapons. That's why he never bothered to go check up on his daughter after surviving the gunshot, because he knew that she was involved. While being interviewed by the authorities, police gradually became suspicious of Jennifer because the burglary seemed out of the ordinary. Why would the burglars take out 2 witnesses but decide to spare one who had clearly seen what they'd done? It made no sense whatsoever. The police interviewed her, and even though they gave her every right to leave, their suspicions were justified because of her behavior. She seemed pretty tense and nervous for someone who had just been through such a traumatic event. There was even a point when Jennifer claimed that the man who had broken into their home to steal money and jewelry. But if their motives were purely to steal, the police wondered why both Bic and Han's cars were still in the driveway. These were luxury cars like a Mercedes-Benz and Lexus that would have high resale value on the black market. But the truth would reveal itself only 3 days later. Han woke up and told the police an entirely different story to what Jennifer had said. According to Han, Jennifer was never tied up in the first place and was talking to one of the hitmen while her mother's body lay lifeless in a pool of blood. The police took Jennifer into the interrogation room once more, and after a grueling 9 hours of questioning, Jennifer finally cracked under the pressure. She first told them a modified version of the truth, that she'd hired the hitmen to actually take her out because she wanted to end her life, but was too afraid to do it, so then hired someone else to do it. Unfortunately, there was a miscommunication about who was to be taken out, so the hitman went for her parents instead. Obviously, the police didn't buy any of this. After one lengthy trial, the verdict was finally given. Jennifer and the 3 hitmen were all sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. This means that Jennifer will be 49 by the time she can request parole. As for Han, his injuries and their long-term effects were so severe that he was unable to go back to work. Today, Han is still haunted by the headaches and the trauma of seeing his slain wife before his eyes. He is now but a shadow of his former self, engulfed by fear, pain, anxiety, and depression. As for his son Felix, he is living with his dad, but they have put a restraining order against Jennifer, so they never have to see her again. This goes to show you that how you raise your children can either make or break them. In this case, the strict parenting of the Pans severely traumatized their daughter, who in turn began living a fake life before finally lashing out at them in the worst way possible. She gave the go-ahead for her parents to have their lives cruelly taken from them, which later cost her freedom. So really, did she even achieve anything, except for a more extreme version of what her parents already put her through? So with that being said, we've come to the end of this video. Don't forget to leave a like, click on that notification bell, and subscribe to the channel to get more bone-chilling content on some of the most shocking homicides in human history. And until we meet again, remember, nobody owns a life, but anyone who can pick up a frying pan can take one.